Hello, everyone. It's Larry Kotlikoff back with Economics Matters, the podcast. One of the reasons our economy in the in our country has succeeded over the years is that we've had great inventors. And today I have with me Trevor Chandler. Chandler, who's one of the top inventors in the country, and he's not a household name, but he should be. He's uh, he's been granted 31 patents or provisional patents in artificial intelligence and AI and automation, and many of these patents are world's first achievements in AI and software automation. So he's a complete one of the founders of AI and one of the top AI scientists in the world. Uh, this hasn't been ignored by the Defense Department. He holds top secret government security clearances with the Defense Department, and he's completed more than 40 projects for the DoD, Defense Department of Defense, DARPA, which is the Department of Defense's research facility, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and one of the projects he worked on exceeded $3.5 billion in 2023. He designed a missile detection system for the Air Force. In 2019, he was an advisor to the newly created Joint Artificial Intelligence Center and the Department of Defense's Artificial AI Center for Excellence. Uh, he's worked on a score of technology projects. So it's not just AI. This guy works on all kinds of inventions, as you'll learn in a second, and as he'll show you in a second. And he's worked for leading companies from Oracle, Microsoft, Hewlett Packard, Walmart, SRI International, Hunter Douglas, and many more. And so, in addition to this AI and machine learning aspect to his inventions, he's an expert in robotics. He's going to show you a couple of his robots in software development, in virtual reality, computer vision, software testing, automation, and also detection of viruses. I got to indirectly and now more directly meet Trevor because he was developing after COVID through a company a mask that one would wear, and you're going to see it in a second, that would detect that could detect and kill uh, any, not just COVID, but other viruses that might be in the room that you're in or in the building that you're in. So let me stop right there. I've given you a little bit of a sense of Trevor's background here, and just say, hey, Trevor, thanks so much for joining us. And give me a little bit of your background. Give everybody a little bit of your background. You're now about 54, right? You've got a couple kids, you live in Colorado, and you've got this history of working for lots of companies, developing lots of things, and just give everybody a sense of where you grew up, how many pounds you weighed at birth, and how you went from, pretty quickly, how you went from that childhood to getting involved in inventing things, because you're inventing things like mad. And, you've given me more or less a tour of your workshop in your house. You've got lots of different rooms, and the rooms are full of different inventions, either completed or half completed, I mean, this is something from like Back to the Future, so to speak. You are the real thing. So say thanks for joining us. Merry Christmas.
Thanks. Thanks, Larry, and Merry Christmas to you as well. Technology seemed to be something that was kind of destiny for me. Strangely enough, even my initials, TEC, spell tech. So it's this kind of bizarre thing. I grew up with the rise of the home computer. So because of it, things worked out just right. There are a lot of studies with learning second languages.
Yeah.
and how it wires your brain for that type of thing. And I believe that also applies for computer languages, because by age 10, my identical twin brother and I were experts in the languages that were available then to us, basic, and then we would do a lot of what's called machine language, and just typing hundreds of pages of machine addresses. And that's how we programmed way back then on the Commodore computers. But I kind of grew up and kind of took it for granted what kind of experience that had given me. Then it was also,
Were your parents, let me ask you, were your parents interested in science or technology, or did they just, were you guys just doing this off on your own?
my mom, she started college for nuclear physics at Emmanuel Honors College in Boston.
Yeah.
She was
My daughter-in-law went to Emmanuel.
oh,
So,
great.
mhm.
It was unfortunate with my mom. She was brilliant, and she was really set up to achieve so much, and she did, just not in a way of science. She had multiple sclerosis. She was at age 19. She
Ooh,
was diagnosed with that, and they can't do a whole lot about it even today, although they have medicines that can kind of
mhm.
keep things at bay. So it put her in a wheelchair. One day she was at school just fine, and the next day she was in a wheelchair. The doctors told her that she wouldn't live another year, which she lived up into her 80s.
Wow.
So she didn't have that science. She didn't actively achieve on her own, but she was very smart, very, very clever. My dad was kind of the opposite, in where he was highly skilled in electronics mostly, but it was self-taught. He had always been very interested. So he had a CB shop, and that was a big thing back in the mid 70s and late 70s and whatnot. So I had a very excellent knowledge of electronics and science concepts in general. In fact, we used to create little devices that we'd use to shock our older sister with like a 9-volt battery and a little transformer and a switch. Then we'd plug in. We made our own little harness so we could plug capacitors into the wall socket, watch them
Wow.
blow up. So it was.
Let me just ask you a quick question. Your brother, your twin brother, I didn't know you had a twin brother. Did he go into inventions as well? Did he get into this kind of world?
He did, but I went into the software with some hardware, and he really went into the hardware and kind of networking aspects of it.
So
So
does he work for a specific company or?
he actually does investigative forensic work for legal cases. So
Uh,
he uses AI and other things to just kind of run forensics and gather evidence and build up defense cases and things of that nature.
just quickly, so fascinating because you guys are identical. You got the same genome. What do you think it is that led you in one direction, him in the other direction? He had the same opportunities, and you both had the same opportunities as each other. I'm actually a fraternal twin. My,
Oh,
my brother's 5 minutes older. He's also an academic. He's the president of Cornell
oh
University,
wow.
turns out. Yeah. And
Yeah. Yeah, my brother and I, it's funny, but in the 80s, music and live music was a really big deal. And my mom, like, I started playing electric guitar. My mom could hear the amplifier, even if it was like on like 0.0001 volume. She could hear it from the other side of the house. I couldn't even hear it, but she had an uncanny ability to hear it. So my grandmother ended up buying me equipment. Eventually, my parents learned to like live with it, I guess. They tolerated it. And my grandmother bought my brother drums. And I think it was interesting because then what happened is I was involved more in this technology from a music perspective. The guitar is a much more kind of, it's intricate from a notes perspective, where the drums become intricate. The drums have notes, even though most people don't know they're tuned to specific sets of notes generally. But when he took that in going into drums, I think he kind of fully embraced the more hardware and how you use devices and things of that nature.
Well, so that's really interesting. That a little, interest in this versus that, and you probably could have learned drums, and you could have learned guitar, and you guys could be in different fields right now because of that. So that's super interesting about the nature of random outcomes that impact people's careers and therefore the economy. Really cool. But and in some ways a little discouraging that the randomness can influence you so much that something seemingly meaningless could matter so much to what somebody ends up doing and contributing to society. They can contribute more or less than was possible. But anyway, show us some of the toys you've got there that you've been
Sure.
developing over the years that are sitting next to you.
Yeah, let me switch the camera around here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can start with those two. And there's a pair of them, these robots, because, well, I felt bad after creating one, like the other one might, not like it was lonely. I mean, I understand it's a machine, of course, but it just seemed like the right thing to do. Before I created these, I created all kinds of humanoid robots, ones that walked. I created some that had like these kind of roller skate devices. But when it all came down to it, and I tried every different combination, these wheels are omnidirectional. You can kind of see the wheels have like little beads on them almost. So this thing can move in any direction without needing to turn. And it can also turn in place. Having these square shapes really lets you store a lot. And all you need to do to handle things like stairs is put another set of these wheels on the front. And then you can create with two sets of omnidirectional wheels. You can kind of climb up things that way. Oh, by the way, that little stick is pretty funny. It's like my tribute to R2D2. You have that little stick that you could zap, crazy zany creatures with lightning. Why I created this? I modeled these robots in 3D, and then I put them in a virtual reality environment using a program called Unity 3D. And then I started having them compete against each other to learn through different types of artificial intelligence I've created. And I was thinking about The Matrix, which I love that movie and all of those types of movies. And I thought, in The Matrix, you have human beings. They're in the Matrix, plugged into these pods, and then we're living in a virtual reality. I thought to myself, I'm going to do the opposite. So I actually created virtual representations of these robots in software. And then what I would do is I would set up a real physical area with obstacles and other objectives in it. And then I would have the robots run I have kind of a multi-objective type of reinforcement learning, you might think, an AI that can solve many things at the same time. So what I did is I had these robots use the AI virtually. So they ran through all the possible moves that they could make from every position and place in the virtual environment. And then they very quickly, within usually between 4 and 20 seconds, figure out exactly how they can navigate the area. Then the robot uses that knowledge to operate in the physical environment.
How financially secure do you feel? Imagine a tool to help you make smart financial decisions a tool that factors in all your financial data and shows what you can safely spend every year for the rest of your life. That tool is Maxify. Powerful, accurate, and easy to use. Developed by Boston University economist Lawrence Kotlikoff, Maxify takes the guesswork out of financial decisions at every stage of life. Maxify calculates what you can afford to spend now and throughout retirement. And you can run what-if scenarios to see how your finances might change by taking a new job, buying a home, or downsizing. Knowing the impact before you decide lets you make smarter decisions so you can finally enjoy financial peace of mind. Are you ready? Visit Maxify.com today to start planning. That's Maxify with an I. Maxify. Maxify.com.
So what year is this happening? When did you build these guys?
Sure, I built these guys a good 10 years ago.
Wow, so this is really early. So here you are having, first of all, you're getting real data because the thing is observing real actions. I mean, they're getting feedback there's no hallucinations of, hey, I did this and it didn't quite work out for this mathematical reward that the code is updating itself on to try and make that reward the highest as possible, that you did the right thing in this context. So the and now they're teaching themselves. That's it sounds like this is way before these major AI companies are onto this, but maybe they were onto. Maybe I've got that wrong, but it just seems 10 years ago seems pretty early.
It is very early. Really, if we look at all of AI and conventional computing, I kind of split it up into three eras. And era one was the age of keywords, the age where you had to know exactly what you were looking for. And, maybe you could use a wild card and looked for example, for text that started with the letters PRO or whatever it might be. But that was it. You kind of had to know what you were looking for. Then we moved into the age of predictive AI, where we get a bunch of data that represents something means something to one or many people. And then they could take other data that's very similar, and they can make educated guesses based on that, the data that they've learned from. And that was the era we were into all the way till 2016, 2017. And there's argument about this. 2017, there was a paper called All You Need Is Attention.
Yeah, shoot your screen back. Well, actually, show us the other two toys. And then we're going to come back to finishing up this discussion.
Okay, great.
But
this was one of my first devices, and it was too far ahead of its time, I think. And what we have here, it's a handheld device you could take with you. Everything it needs is self-contained. You can kind of see a zoom wheel there on the side. There's a digital microscope embedded in the side, and then you have 3 slots for microscope slides, and they're the 10x, 100x, 1000x multiplier. So you take some sample or a blood drop or something of that nature, you put it inside of the slot, you focus it in, and then you just use the touch screen it has all kinds of detection capabilities, detect skin cancer, count white blood cells, all of the things like this. And
so, this gal who went to jail, I forget her name, who for saying that she could take a blood sample and
that Elizabeth with an H, I can't remember. They were having people ride bicycles to do testing real quick and whatnot.
So all she needed to do was hire you.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I reached out to her legal counsel. And I actually said, you know what? I sent them some of my capabilities, demonstrations of them, and said, hey, I know your client's in a lot of trouble, but maybe I can, help undo some of the damage. And I never heard back. So who knows what that was all about. But yeah, that when that event happened, I had already had this for quite some time.
Elizabeth Holmes.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, maybe she'll see this podcast and they'll reach out because maybe there was a lot more than just a fraud involved here. Maybe they actually did have some science. Certainly, they had a lot of people involved.
Yeah.
And then show us the mask. That's where I got involved with you through Adam Penner, who was your CEO of the mask company. And maybe can you pick it up and show it to people a little bit?
Yes. And
There's a mask, but there was a bag of an unassembled mask next to it. But
this is a very rough prototype. So it was, I actually 3D printed this one. So it didn't go through the professional process. But what you have here in the back, you've got a removable filter. And this is a very interesting to look at the filter, because these masks that do some type of processing of the air or things of that nature, there's a real struggle because you need a lot of space in the mask so you can breathe properly. But you also need, the more space you have to disinfect over or sterilize over, the more electronics build up in the mask. And it very quickly becomes something you don't want to wear on your face.
So yeah, so just to be clear, this is a mask for people. Let's say COVID is still raging. You have to go to work, to the office. You're not going to be, let's say, this is to avoid being locked down. You're put on this mask, and the air comes through the bottom. It gets filtered, and then there's
Ultraviolet. We basically have
ultraviolet.
it eradicates basically all virus that's DNA or RNA based, which pretty much all of them. It basically damages their DNA. It unlinks little strands, to kind of explain it in a simple way. And then when those cells try to reproduce, they die. And I actually felt guilty about that. As crazy as it sounds, you know what I mean? But anyhow, yeah.
But just to be clear to everybody, so the filters, the air goes into the mask through a hole at the bottom, through this filter, and then there's these light rays, the ultraviolet rays, being emitted, hitting the air as it comes through the filter, and it kills any virus, not just COVID, but really could be biological hazards. Even if the military's out there fighting a war and somebody's trying to use biological warfare methods to kill people, this could be something that our soldiers could be wearing. Also, people operating on someone with a contagious disease, they could be wearing these masks. But anyway, it kills the virus through the ultraviolet, and then when the air reaches your mouth and lungs, it's not dangerous. So, and this got pretty far into the point where the FDA approved it as a medical device, but I think it's still up for grabs to see whether a major company like 3M would pick it up and start manufacturing it. Am I saying that correctly, Trevor?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. We do have a little bit of final work we need to do with the FDA, but 99% of it is a done deal. And we passed all of the tests. They told us that if we wanted to claim we could kill all virus, bacteria, etc., that we had to test it on the toughest strains of both. So they picked a type of virus. They picked a number of them, but one of them was one that's used for experiments in space due to its robust ability to withstand radiation. And we obliterated it at what's called log 5. We obliterated, it's 99.999, and everything under that was log 6, 99.9999%.
So let's turn off your screen for a moment, or actually move yours. Let's look at you rather than
Sure.
At this point.
Oh, by the way, a little bit of funniness. When I first invented that mask, this was the original prototype shape, but then I realized it looked like a cup supporter, so I kind of changed the design real quick there.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, that is funny. Okay. So now we're back with you, or getting back to you. There you are. Cool. So let's talk, the main invention we wanted to talk about was your development of artificial general intelligence. This is the development of artificial general intelligence, and then beyond that, artificial superintelligence is really where the industry says it's trying to get. And we've got many large companies investing, it seems like every day somebody else is announcing that they're putting in, X billions of dollars, whether it's in the tens of billions or hundreds of billions, or they're hiring some AI scientist from this other company for $100 million a year or $1 billion, and they're stealing each other's knowledge. And you have a patent, you've got 31 patents or patent pendings, patents that are pending, which are applications for patents, as I understand it, that and some of them seem to be listed under your name, and maybe some are listed under other companies' names.
My name I do have a bunch for other companies. They all come up under my name, but my favorite, just handful of patents, I put under my name with my middle initial. Yep. So Trevor E. Chandler. And to be clear, everything you've said is 100% correct. What I have the only model that I know of. And in fact, I have two of them, because when you make something that's extraordinary, you really need extraordinary evidence. I wanted to be sure that I had passed what I call the primary barriers to artificial superintelligence. When I came up with the algorithms and the equations, and I tested them and they worked for the first time, I then took the fundamental rules that I believe to be true that led my development. And then I created the same thing again using a completely different implementation. And this actually ended up in uncovering probably the most incredible set of breakthroughs that I've ever made in my career. And it set me up to make more. I know for a fact, as long as I'm still here on this earth, that over the next 1 to 5 years, I'll make more advances than I've ever made before. But what I have is I have these models. I have this knowledge that if you create a mechanism with it, and by the way, this doesn't have to be just software. It can actually be physical, and you can create neural networks using physical structures. They've been creating simple ones using like kids' electronic snap circuits. And so that's an area. It's more complex. It's further behind. But like I said, this mechanism, this understanding, you can implement it in a variety of different places. It gives you the potential for your AI to become artificially general or artificially super intelligent. Now you still have to run it and get there. But you can think of it like this. We've had a lot of pets that are dogs, and some of them know a few tricks, some of them don't know many tricks, but we finally figured out how to train a dog to where they can train and they can learn enough tricks that eventually, if they learn so many, where every new trick that they would ever want to perform could be achievable by some combination of a trick they previously learned or some similar relationship, that they would be able to achieve that. They would be able to remember it. They would be able to utilize it. So that's what I have. I call them the primary barriers. And then there are a number of primary barriers that I'm sure we'll get into a little later.
Want more money, less risk, and a better life? Buy Money Magic, a new book by Lawrence Kotlikoff, Boston University economist, personal finance expert, and best-selling author. Whether it's education, career, marriage, housing, investing, retirement, Social Security, IRA, or 401k decisions, Money Magic delivers scores of secrets to raise your living standard. Financial journalist Jane Bryant Quinn says Money Magic is a must-read, Nobel laureate George Akerlof says Money Magic is quite probably the best financial advice book ever written. Financial guru John Malden says, "You'll love this amazing book. It's full of wit, wisdom, and startling paths to a better financial life." And columnist Scott Burns calls Money Magic a funny, brilliant read, offering wildly powerful, unconventional choices that can literally change your life. Get Lawrence Kotlikoff's Money Magic today at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and independent booksellers.
So you were when you were showing us the robots, you were saying, and talking about it, early AI and reinforcement learning, getting truthful answers and using that to update the the algorithms. So we're talking about AI in the form of neural networks, and for most people who are listening, probably they haven't actually been programming themselves. They don't know exactly what it means to, what that particular mathematical structure looks like. And I personally haven't ever programmed neural networks, but my understanding, but they are being used by economists where we're actually, writing the code as opposed to just calling an LLM like Perplexity AI or ChatGPT in our programs. And so, as I understand it, we're talking about trying to predict something based on a mathematical model where there's explanatory variables called state variables that are interacted with coefficients. Parameters is another term. And
Mm-hmm.
then those parameters themselves are represented as functions, mathematical functions of the same set of state variables, maybe in different forms, like logarithmic or exponential form, very complicated functions, but they've got their own coefficients. So you got each of these coefficients, initial coefficients, is itself a function of many other coefficients interacted with the state variables. And then each of those coefficients, so now we're kind of getting to layer two.
Mm-hmm.
Each initial coefficient has its own representation as a bunch of other coefficients. And then those coefficients are represented by yet more functions. Each of those coefficients is represented by yet another function, which is a function of yet another set of coefficients. So you can have really, I guess, billions of coefficients. And if you have enough data to figure out how to adjust each of these coefficients, the billions of coefficients, one by one, to get this whole system, given all the other coefficient values, just trying to modify one at a time. And it may be being done in a more advanced way where they're modifying a bunch of things simultaneously. But the simplest thing I think would be to modify one at a time to try and get this whole system to predict more accurately some objective, like
Mm-hmm.
that there's actually if it's a sensor maybe on a car that you're actually about to hit something, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and would be an objective just to stop the car or
Sure.
to see that there's some object in front of you with a higher degree of accuracy than you had before. So that's one structure that's being used in, I guess, by all these companies with different variations. But your your patent, which is for real, it's just like these physical things you're showing us are for real. It's not anybody can go online and take a look under your name for patents. Uh, you're using a different mathematical structure than neural networks. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, part of what, when we've been talking back and forth a bit in the preparation for this discussion, and you've been talking about the trying to model your, if you like, mathematics around actual animals, starting
Mm-hmm.
with the simplest animal, a worm, and
Yep.
try and put together mathematical formulations or models of how the worm's brain is working and go in that direction. These large language models, if I'm saying this correctly, are in your context uh, available or there to help humans interact with AGI that you're generating.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual mathematics of the LLM part that's a neural network, but the AGI part is a different mathematical structure. Am I saying that correctly?
You are. And this is something that people don't understand. It's honestly one of the most puzzling things that you see in the global world of AI. We're in an age right now where we're creating new capabilities in AI faster than we ever have before, not and massively faster. But the problem is all of those advances, they're improvements on pre-existing systems. And because of it, what's happening, the engineers don't realize it, but there's something that we call the technological dependency chain. It's how many things have to be in place before you can start inventing whatever it is you want to make. And we're at an all-time high right now. And because of it, and because of the huge amount of capabilities that have been added, it's causing the AI engineers to throw away innovation. And they wouldn't think of it this way because honestly, they can't see it. It takes me, some people, it takes me months to kind of break them out of that mode.
Is it fair to say, Trevor, that these companies are kind of in the state of the art is kind of boxing itself in?
It is.
It's built this particular structure and it's so big and so much money's been going into it. You can't start from scratch and go in a different direction. All you can do is add on to something that's probably the wrong mathematics to solve this problem. It's like, I think about opening up a bottle of beer and I could bring my hammer up or a can opener or bottle opener. Bottle opener is going to do it. A hammer is never going to do it. And if you're, so I think,
And they want the hammer. That's the thing. They want the hammer so bad to be that bottle opener that they're just going with it.
yeah. And, as you know, I've got my own software company. We've developed financial planning software and it's got its own mathematics, its own algorithm. And it's in some way, it is artificial intelligence. It's just not neural networks. But we are kind of getting I think everybody is so focused on these LLMs and their particular mathematical structure that they think, well, that can solve any problem in the world and could solve, and gee, you've spent 32 years developing your software, but it could be developed it could just be run in 10 seconds by some LLM. Well, I don't think so because the math here is very different from that. And the guys who tried to use this math, neural networks, to solve this problem in other economists have gotten basically nowhere for a very long. I mean, they've gotten 3 years to solve one household's financial problem to some degree of accuracy. Our software can solve it in half a second to many degrees of accuracy, the same kind of question.
You have innovation. That's why the AI, people don't realize this, but if you took every person's knowledge that has ever lived from the beginning of recorded history for our human species, and you put it into a database and you put it into an LLM and maybe some other types of AI to be a little more versatile, people would start using it. They would instantly be amazed because it has a lot of knowledge in it that our LLMs of today don't. And that's the trap. The trap is people use those systems and they look at them and they go, wow, this is something, I'm seeing this AI do something that I didn't know. I didn't know that. But the truth is somebody did. And what that person knew went into the data, and the data went into the large language model. So even if you have all of human capability represented by data in an LLM, the more people that use it, the faster we get at making incremental improvements and the less innovation we make. And we've flip-flopped from 1920 till today. We're at 20% innovation, 80% advancing small improvements in pre-existing systems. People, if everybody in the world used an AI that represented all the language, all the experience of humanity, humanity would never move forward. Never. Because all those models do is correlate information. They're not emergent. They can never be more than the data they are trained on. And that's the puzzler. That why the people can't see this is I think they look at this problem. I think it goes down like this. Wow, I sure love ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Llama. I'm so excited because it seems like these things understand me. Yeah, I know they're not complete. I know that that they have limitations, but you know what? We'll solve those going forward. That's the attitude of the AI engineers. The users, they use it and they go, whoa, this is unbelievable. They go ask their friend Joe, the AI engineer, hey, what do you think about all this LLM stuff? And Joe doesn't tell them, well, they have 7 major flaws and a whole host of limitations. They're dangerous to use because the outcome is not complete. If the relevant information associated with your prompt is beyond a certain size and not a very big one. And they certainly don't tell their friends that, hey, yeah, you know what? We can't really get it to do anything beyond what we tell it to do, but we'll fix that in the future. That's kind of the state we're in.
So your mathematics is different, your algorithms are different, and in your patent that you received in May of 2023. So we're talking 2 years ago, you received a patent. And let me just be clear that it's not easy, or remind everybody that it's not easy to get a patent. There's a patent office and you have to show that you've actually got something. You got to cite all the prior knowledge and you have to show that you've got something, and you can't just talk about it. You have to write it in mathematical terms, basically, to show exactly what it is that is new. And getting a patent for an algorithm is particularly difficult. But anyway, Trevor did back then. He has some inventions are patented, some are not patented. This one happened to have been patented, and it really, as he describes it, if I'm not misstating, does provide us with AGI, artificial general intelligence.
The potential. It gives you the potential to achieve that state.
Yeah.
The rest of the world they have not even discovered the road to AGI. I'm on the road and I'm driving down it, basically. That's right. Yeah.
Question: how financially secure do you feel? Do you have enough money to retire? How much is enough? And if you don't have enough, how can you possibly find that money before you retire? Tough questions. One smart answer: Maxify. Maxify is the powerful online planning tool that takes the guesswork out of retirement. Maxify compares your assets against your fixed expenses to calculate how much you can safely spend every year for the rest of your life. And it shows you safe ways to find more money. Developed by Boston University economist Lawrence Kotlikoff, Maxify makes a complicated problem like retirement planning simple. Maxify. Powerful, accurate, easy to use. Want some peace of mind? Make the smart choice. Maxify. Visit Maxify.com today to start planning. That's Maxify with an I. MAXIFI. Maxify.com.
As you've described it to me in our prior conversations, is that this new, let's say, framework, which is not the neural networks of coefficients being functions of coefficients, being functions of coefficients in different layers, but a different mathematical structure, is that you've developed, let's say part of your structure can be called a brain that is permitting the system to generate its own behavior and to produce new actions and then learn from those new actions and to engage in perturbations, to try different combinations of things which lets it then learn from, uh, as just an analogy. Maybe this analogy is not perfect, but we have so I have as I mentioned, this financial planning software tool, Max by Planner, which I've developed over 32 years. It can solve all kinds of problems quickly. But we also have data from the Survey of Consumer Finances from the Federal Reserve. And we have these things, the engine and the data merged together. And so we can now perturbate uh, all the data and produce lots and lots of examples for a system to learn what to do in these circumstances. And it could be that you got this household where the husband is making X and the wife is making Y, and now you just say, well, what if we have the wife make 2Y, and she's going to retire 3 years earlier, and they live in this state versus that state? How does that change everything? That's an example of a perturbation, right? So maybe you can elaborate on the perturbations in the brain underlying your this invention.
Sure, absolutely.
And I don't know whether my analogy was at all on target or not, but
oh, it is absolutely, it is. And some people say that our AI today, the neural network stuff, is based on the human brain. Some say animal brain, some say just a brain. To be clear, there are huge numbers of different types of neurons in different animals up to the human and whatnot. And there are different numbers of ways that these connect with each other. And there are a variety of additional components connected that there's not a clear understanding biologically what they do.
So just to interrupt there, or just to add to that, there's these electronic mechanisms that neurons send electronic messages, and you were telling me the other day there's chemical. Actually, that's my son who's a biology PhD student, but I understand there's different chemical transmissions and different levels of chemicals, degrees, so that different parts of our brains are talking to other parts in these physical ways that we're not really approximating with, let's say, a neural network.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not. And in fact, if you were really to study the brains and look at how they're activating the neurons, what our human being our software, what it looks like is a bunch of switches and a bunch of values. Switches and values is basically what it would look like. And something is either on or it's off. But in the human brain or the animal brain, even the simplest, even the most primitive, what's considered modern brain, which would be the nematode, the C. elegans, because it has short-term and long-term memory mechanisms. Those are more like you've got test tubes everywhere. You've got a bunch of tanks. You've got pumps pumping stuff in, and tanks are overflowing a little, and some of the overflow is making it into other tanks and test tubes around it. It's a big, giant chemical mouse factory mess, basically, is what the reality is. And
we're talking about a worm here, the simplest.
Yep, even the worm. But the human is like that, except the complexity is exponentially greater. And the structure is, we're in the trillions of neurons and connections, where the nematode has 302. And I believe it has, like, interestingly enough, if it's a hermaphrodite version, it has 295 or something. And then if it's actually has a male gender, then it's 302, something around there. But that's compared to trillions in the human brain. But this was actually, there are many times in history where we have discovered things that were super important, but nobody realized it. And in my mind, I have like this special place in my brain that is waiting for very specific things to happen. because I know when those things happen, immediately other capabilities are unlocked. And the large language model was one of them. The first perceptron neural network was one of them. Of course, I wasn't alive back then. And then the first good computer vision, those are all kind of those events, that enablers. But there were some people that about, oh shoot, it's been 15, maybe even 20 years ago. A bunch of people got together and they took this C. elegans 302 neuron with about 500 connections. The map was finally completed. So you have its whole brain, you have all its connections, its nervous system, you have all its secondary functions, and all of those have been recorded. So we knew it's one of only like 3 animals in the world that we actually have that level of knowledge about. And the other 2 are fruit flies, 2 different varieties of fruit flies. So they have all this stuff. And so they create a neural network that copies the structure of that worm. And when they did that, and then they started running the software was inherently starting to move like the worm. And it was crazy. It was like a science fiction moment. And people were really excited. They really thought that thought it was huge news. And it was huge news. But the problem is they missed, to this day, they missed the important part. It's not enough to have the structure. They couldn't do anything else but make it move around. That was the problem. But the reason is because they had the right structure, but the operation was gone. They weren't operating the structure properly. So when I came in, and it was quite a task. I had to build in all kinds of, I had to read about 150 white papers on this nematode. I know more about this toad than I ever knew would be possible to know about a little worm. But the gist of it is, once you operate correctly, and it's complex, you have to copy the memory recall system, engram structure of the brain, random storage of brain activations. You have to support chemical and electrical. So like in the brain, like our neural networks look like this. I've got a neuron, you got a neuron, and guess what? We're connected. That's what they look like.
When you say our neural networks, we're talking about the LLM networks.
LLM networks, every neural network in anything we've ever created.
Not our actual physical brains, but
not our physical brains. And that's the problem. So what really happens is you've got, at a very simple level, you can, even at the simplest level, we completely miss the mark. So this does exist, but it's more like this. You've got like a little junction. You've got a little chasm that the electricity has to jump over. But we also have this, where instead of sharing electricity, it's sharing chemical, and the chemical shoots out, boom. And now all 5 of those get activated, but they may or may not get completely activated. It depends on all this cumulative gain through all these pumps and all this other.
So your invention is trying to mathematically basically model this particular worm.
Yes.
And can you give people, because we only have a few minutes left, maybe like 10 minutes, give people a sense of how the invention works? I mean, the thing people don't realize is that any particular mathematical problem can describe lots of different forms.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not, the neural network is convenient for some updating, and they figured out how to update these coefficients quickly, and so it can do a lot of things. But now you built this huge thing that you're kind of stuck with a lot of investors you need to make happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Absolutely.
But it's not like one couldn't have thought about a different mathematical structure from the get-go. It's like, I guess, the early or there was a beta for, wasn't there like an early CD or something that, was two different
Oh,
technologies? We went this
yeah.
one path and it was the
Yep.
right path. Everybody decided after but then we were stuck. Anyway, yeah, tell us about the invention a little bit more,
So,
the patent.
sure. So basically, when I first got it working, right before the very first one worked, I knew that the models were trapped in prisons of their own data or actions. And then to make it worse, our human selves, were trapped in the prisons of our knowledge, our bias. But for whatever reason, I was able to kind of see that. I was able to see that and identify it. And I knew that going into it, that was something that was missing. So back then, and this is very much like the Turing test, the one that everybody uses to. It used to be, yeah, the
Yeah.
yeah, to see if like they had this test and they believed that if a computer could fool somebody into thinking that it was not a computer, that we would meet this milestone. But what ended up happening is we achieved that, and nothing special happened. That's very much like our definitions of, because right now we say we're in the age of narrow AI. It's an AI that can only do one thing or one type of thing. And then an AGI is an AI that can do many things equal or better than humans. So in other words, it's not narrow, and it can do a lot of stuff equal or better. I mean, I've
Also not the old, it's not the current AI either. That's the
yeah,
other important thing. It's not the current, because when you say it's a new AI, people are going to say, well, it's just more of this, more of the same, but it's not the same.
it's not the same. It's not the
Is there any way you can kind of convey mathematically how it's different just in words?
Yes, yes. The system is able, it needs an objective. It needs one root objective. It needs a starting place. That's the minimum. Once it has that, it analyzes the code used to describe that objective. And then it will create what I call these evolutionary chains of objectives. So let's say I have a feature A. Let's make it really simple. We're going to solve a maze, a line maze. We can go right, we can go left, and let's say we can jump. We could jump up. Now I analyze that code, and then I'll create something that's like that, just a little bit different. And then I'll make it more different. And then the beginnings of it start reducing. And when we get to the very end of this chain, we have two completely different objectives. But between each objective, they were very similar. Now, this is super important. That root objective, we know what the success needs to be. So somewhere in the code, there is something that says, if you get to this state, you win, or whatever the case might be. Because we have that and we have this code, I was able to analyze the relationship between the assertion to determine if the objective has been achieved and the objective. So now as I evolve these things forward from one feature to another, I evolve the assertion as well. So now as it evolves these objectives, the ability to determine if the new objectives have been met are also evolved with it. Now, that's half of it. Now we do kind of the same thing in the actions. Now, when we try to solve these, if we start at the very basic, let's say we have no actions, we're completely empty. The first thing we'll do is we'll go look at our brain, not the human brain, but a digital brain that persists for the AI, all the problems that the AI solves for its entire life. It has that brain. And in fact, it's not just one. Every AI always needs that brain. And every time they learn something, the brain gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually the knowledge in the brain it becomes equal or greater than the state of being artificially general or artificially super intelligent. So these actions, I go in, I check the brain, and let's say I don't have anything there. So I have nothing inside of me, I have nothing in the brain, and then I can do a quick scan and look for other AI scripts and see if they have anything in them. So let's say I find something and it actually has movements, left, right, up, down. Okay, so I grab those. So I have a few actions. Now I try up and I'm learning that it's not working. Like the down, up, and let's say up is separate than jump. The up and down really never do anything. So really quickly they get worked out as not useful. And then I start learning that when I'm on this line maze, the more I go towards the goal, the more useful things become. But I keep hitting these problems that I can't seem to get around. And so I've got these barriers that I actually need to be able to jump over. And so what the AI starts doing is it starts doing things like, oh, well, can I go diagonally? Can I go?
So when Trevor, when you use the word AI, you're not thinking about neural networks. You're thinking about your system,
Yes.
your
Yes.
code. So
exactly.
So we replace the word AI, but with your code.
Yes.
That would be a little bit clearer. So your code is making perturbations to try and
Reach the objective.
It's programmed to try different things, to innovate.
Yep.
And that's something different. Would you say that's the core of AGI in your code?
Yes. And the thing is, and this is what the other AI companies don't seem to understand, one of the major problems that you have to be able to advance outside of your human bias. But what's going to happen is they're going to eventually, if they're lucky, it's going to be like climbing up a mountain that has fog. And when they climb up that mountain and they get to the top past the fog and they look out, they're going to have a wake up moment. They're going to realize they missed the turn eons ago. They're going to have to think differently, because what we've done is we've improved in something that we wanted to be the solution so bad that we can't get away from it. But what's really happening, the questions that anybody should be asking if they really were on to AGI or ASI is, how is human symbolism going to prevent me from achieving or dumbing down or reducing my chances? Because we have to be able to describe actions so they can be taken. And then we have to be able to describe the outcomes and assert against them. And it's though that is AGI. When you have enough of these and enough of these, what's going to happen is every new task that you're asked to do, it's going to be in here. And that is the road to AGI. That is the road to ASI. Our language is dumbed down because it has to be readable by humans. And then our hardware is created in a way that suits us and our manufacturing capabilities. It may be that we may find, and this is why I have 3 levels of barriers for AGI. I'm heavily in the second. I have the potential. I've solved the scalability problems through inventions, breakthroughs that have been made by copying more and more biological structures. It's kind of like a source to bring in true innovation that can be used in the AI. But it may be that all of our software is not enough to reach the state of AGI. It might be that all of our human language, all of our chemistry, all of our physics, that might not be enough. We may find out that our hardware needs to be completely rewritten. We may find out that we need more types of sensors. It's not illogical to think that we may need physical systems that interact with the world physically, and they might need to be mobile. We live in a physical world. It seems kind of strange that we would be able to be a system could be super intelligent that didn't interact fully with the physical reality that we live and exist in. But those are the things that nobody talks about. So my plan goes all the way through them. Straight up, we go all the way into outer space if we have to. It may be an element that we need to get that has to withstand a certain number of heat. So it doesn't overcome our gravity or take like a 10, 20 mile block of something to be created. But these are things that we need to be considering and thinking about. Nobody does. And instead, people are putting money into the LLMs, hoping they become AGI. And sorry, they're not.
Well, okay, that's a good place to end this. This has really been fascinating, and people can go check out the patent. It's right there if you're interested in the actual mathematics of this. But I think the basic point we've got across here is that you're a humble genius that and thank God for your parents, and thank God you got onto the guitar, and thank God we've got you to help hopefully redirect the course of scientific breakthroughs. And let's hope that everybody who watches this spreads it around to other people, and we can get onto the right course here, what appears to be the right course for getting to AGI and ASI, and hopefully in a manner that it doesn't kill us all. But anyway, best to you, and thanks so much.